Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Well, good morning and thank you for joining us on another edition of Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, where we bring it to you as it is, from where it drops and when it drops. We hope that you've been having a fabulous week so far and that things have been going very well for you despite the hardship that is currently on in the country. Things are really tough indeed, but thank God that we are braving and bracing up for more and better days to come. My name is Emmanuel Ujadikele, and so glad to have you on the show this morning. We're reaching you live from Star Times channel 190 DTT, and you can follow us on all of our social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram at Western Spring Television, and on Twitter at WSTV_NG, and of course on YouTube you can search for our channel Western Spring Television, and do remember to please subscribe when you find our channel there. Once again, thank you for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you for joining us. Good morning. I'm Timothy Jaloluola.
Well, it's Friday, the 6th of January, 2022. Seems that this particular January is moving fast.
Yes, it is. It is moving fast.
I mean, it was just yesterday. I still say yesterday that we all shouted Happy New Year. And then in no distant time, we've done the first working week of the month of 2023. How's it been so far for you? I mean, there's always this excitement that comes with the new year and all of that. As it reflected in any of the activities, New Year resolutions and all of that?
No, not really. I've not exactly had this euphoria about this year, this particular year. No, I haven't. And today is the first Friday of the year. It's moving fast.
Thank God it's Friday. Well, some persons say that maybe because of the way things are in the country, that's why it's not very obvious that we're in a new year. I mean, a lot of persons had a muted Christmas celebration, muted New Year celebration, and so maybe that's what's reflected in the general disposition of people towards the year. But we do hope that it gets better. We hope that it gets better. You know what we do for you here on the show? I will bring you the papers, we'll bring you the interview segment where we break down issues. We'll be having an interesting topic and of course an interesting guest this morning. We'll break down issues for you as they are and try to make light of them and try to give you perspective of those issues. And we'll be doing the papers shortly. We'll be going through the stories and telling you what is happening around the country and what stories are gracing the faces of national dailies this morning. Just stay with us. We'll be right back after this break. Well, that's the break, and then we're back.
Yes, we're back. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We'll be moving to the first leg of today's show, and that will be the newspaper review. Emmanuel.
So what paper are we starting with this morning?
Well, we should start with the Punch newspapers today.
Take us through the Punch.
Right, the banner headline says 28 governors pile up 5.8 trillion naira debts for incoming governments. And the writer says states debts to rise above 200% of revenue in 2023. That's World Bank. And Lagos cannot execute laudable projects without loans, Commissioner. Emmanuel, and 28 governors pile up 5.8 trillion naira debts for incoming governments. Sometime I was saying that it seems it's a trend now for the governors, outgoing governors, to be piling up debts, withdrawing money from the coffers of, the state and then making late-minute appointments. And you said something about it might not be deliberate and it might be deliberate, Let's talk about that for this. Now we have 28 governors. We don't even have one or two. We have 28 states out of 36 and the FCT. It's really something that is disheartening, and I think.
Well, yes, I'd like to know who those 28 governors are. First, that's on page 2 of the newspaper. I will be getting a hard copy later in the day.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know the other 8 governors. that have refused, that have not, piled up the debt. But it really, it is saddening. I'm smiling because I really can't come to terms with it. Like I said yesterday, you need to borrow to develop and then pay back. But some of these debts are not even reasonable. And that's the truth. Some of them are self-serving. Some of them are deliberate efforts to sabotage the incoming administration and all of that. But all on the whole, the fact that their debt will rise above 200% of their revenue in 2023. It's a very worrisome thing that states need to look into. And Lagos, the commissioner is saying you cannot execute laudable projects without loans. Yes, of course, we know that there are some projects that you cannot do on your own with from the state coffers. You have to borrow. But if you have debts that are 200% above your revenue, then it's not really it's a bleak situation.
Great danger. Right, just above the nameplate, we have consumers say electricity tariff hike illegal, anger spreads.
Well, you would expect anger to spread. Of course, nobody wants to pay more. It would have actually been fine if people were paying more and getting value for the money. But of course, they're not getting value for it, and some of these things that just happen in the middle of the night, and then before you know it, all. So
it's only normal for people to, show their grievance and all. FG gives operators ultimatum to name oil well owners. FG gives operators ultimatum to name oil well owners. Well, if the FG is just giving operators ultimatum to name those people, then I think the FG itself has been slack in doing their duty as the federal government of Nigeria. They should know from the start. Don't you think, Emmanuel?
Well, you see, the problem that we have with Nigeria is not just a collective problem. It is a person-to-person problem, an individual problem. The federal government that doesn't know who owns oil wells in its country, it's like a father not knowing the names of his children.
Exactly.
It's embarrassing, to say the least. There is a Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and interestingly, the Minister for Petroleum Resources is the President, Muhammadu Buhari. Chief Silva is the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources. So I expect that ministry should be one of the most sanitized and sanest ministries, seen as Buhari is touted as a no-nonsense person. So if he heads that ministry, this is ridiculous. Giving operators ultimatum to name oil well owners. I mean, this falls within the exclusive list. Only the federal government has power over it. So you shouldn't even be having this problem. This is Nigeria. And we hope that someday we'll move beyond this and go into a position where things are normal.
Yes, we hope so, because it really is ridiculous, as you've said. All right, supporters demand sainthood for Benedict as ex-pope is buried. So his supporters are saying the Pope Benedict should be named a saint, as he is buried. Do you think?
Well, seeing as he's one of the most popular popes, and because of his travails, his health travails, and he still was in service, he took the bold step of stepping down when he was. I think that he has shown the virtues of leadership, the virtues of service, that it's not, you shouldn't die there. There are some who would have opted to die in office, but he's shown that the office is bigger than the person. And that's a lesson for even political office holders. The office is bigger than the president. I can tell you offhand 5 African presidents who are either dying or ailing, but they're still there. They've been there for decades.
And still fighting to stay there. Still
seeking. I mean, our neighbor Cameroon is still extending his tenure. Some of them had to be overthrown. But this is a man who has shown that when it comes to service is also sacrifice. No matter what is accruable to the office, when it's time to bow out, you bow out. So I want to agree that he should be named a saint. It should be named a saint. So we have Saint Benedict. Please pray for us.
I agree with that too, and thank you for that. So Makinde kickstarts second-term campaign, faces multiple battles. That's at the bottom strip of the paper.
Battles are only just beginning, because I wonder what he's going to do in PDP in Oyo State. We had some analysts on the guests talking about the G5 governors, and one of them rightly said that if you are a governorship candidate of your party, you have senatorial candidates, you have House of Representatives candidates. All of these people are on the ballot, for example. On the day of the election, you tell them to vote another party for presidency and vote your party across the board for the other positions. They will be giving these ballot papers at the same time.
Yes.
It's going to be tedious to thumbprint or come down to look. These are things they should consider.
Since there are no names.
Yeah, so what happens when you campaign for another party's presidential candidates? The person wins. It's time for your own governorship candidate. Will that person come to your state to campaign for you or his own party's candidate? So these are issues that I think Governor Makinde needs to look into. The person who is coordinating the G5, Wike, is not running for governorship. His term expires this year. Samuel Autumn, his term expires this year. Piazzo and the rest. So Governor Makinde is going to be seeking re-election. So he has more to lose if he's not careful with some of this politicking that is getting himself into. It's just going to be a mess for him. And he may as well just give the opposition the opportunity to come back to power.
Yes, it is. All right, so how Lagos Policeman Ministry paid 185,000 naira for newborn. We're going to come back to that, but let me read this first. Lagos Ibadan Highway commuters groan as Julius Berger returns. Now, on this policeman ministry issue, paying 185,000 naira for a newborn. I mean, the woman said she had 2 other children before this one. This is her 3rd child, actually, and that the day the child was born, she was stripped of the child. They took the child away from her, and they were offering her this sum, and she was taken to the police station, and that was the last time she saw her child. And the police force, let me say, has been in the news recently for very bad, exactly, and we're still having them. Nobody is nipping their hands in the bud. They're still coming over and over again in the news for bad reports like this. And the ministry, what ministry is paying?
It could be some of these persons hiding under the guise of a ministry. You can't put it past them impersonating the ministries. But when there are baby factories, they're usually run by syndicates. And these syndicates have infiltrated almost every government agency, the police, the Air Force, and all of that. We're not even going to talk about how some persons in uniform provide security for fraudsters. That's a topic for another day. But this is quite disheartening because there was a report that was on here in Osun State about how some police officers were involved in pimping out female inmates. Right here in Osogbo, the Osun State capital. So you cannot put it past the police. But then we must also remember that the police as an institution will always have bad eggs. The only sad part is that the bad eggs now seemingly outnumber the good ones, and so there's a huge problem when it comes to issues like this.
And so
but I hope the woman is reunited
what
with that
is
baby.
the police force doing, or what is the federal government doing, to sanitize the police force? It still comes back to this resurfacing issue over and over again. What are the authorities of the police force before the FG? What are the authorities of the police force doing to ensure that their officers are not engaging, or their names don't keep recurring in the news for bad things like this?
It's unfortunate that
really
instead of sorting out some of these issues, the police force is on Twitter trying to play sympathy or pity card. You get to see that on the trends. Something happened in Lagos, and then it was quite embarrassing and disheartening, some of the things that were said by the police spokesperson in Lagos. We'll get to that, but we hope that the federal government does sanitize the system. That's all the Punch newspaper this morning. We'll move on quickly to the Daily Trust. The banner headline on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning says, cash withdrawals from government accounts to end March 1st as the NFIU. The writer says officials to receive ESTA code allowances through accounts. Federal government, states, local governments withdrew over 1 trillion naira since 2015. Implementation requires political will, expert, and program ought to have started alongside TSA. I used to wonder why officials have to receive their ESTA codes and allowances in cash over the counter. I wonder where that is done in any part of the world. You want to Esther Curtis, of course, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. But you want to go out somewhere and then they're giving you the money over in cash, So some of the issues that we really need to pay attention to. Below the banner headline, there's a picture there of COVID-19 resurfacing in Shanghai, China. And just below that, INEC develops PVC's collection towards registration areas. That will be until January 22nd. So please get your PVCs if you intend to participate in this year's election.
Very important.
Yes. And at the bottom strip, 5-day-old baby risks amputation over doctor's negligence in Kano. Very sad one there.
Very, very sad.
I wonder what that negligence could be. But again, I don't. Nigeria is a theater. You see all sorts. You hear all sorts. Some of the things you hear are quite unbelievable. I mean, how the policeman involved in selling a baby, the doctor's negligence, 5-day-old baby. These are things that are very worrisome. A local government autonomy bill hindering constitution amendment. Ovi Omoagege as a deputy senate president there. An APC governor's not in secret deal with Atiku, Nasarawa governor. And above the banner headline, below the nameplate, OPEC's oil output rises as Nigeria rebounds. Very cheering news. We hope that
it is.
Profit from that is judicious.
Would help us, would help us service some of our debts and would help the economy, bounce back.
Interestingly, we'll be speaking to an economic historian on the show this morning who will be helping us make a sense of the budget and some of the issues around. I'm very particular about 80.6% on debt servicing. We'll get to that. Bauchi Airmail replaces Bello Karfi with Ahmed Ukari as new waziri. And 18 Borno passengers burned to death in Bauchi auto crash. Very sad one there. And just below the nameplate, still in captivity, like I always like to remind us, 11 schoolgirls of FGC Benin Yauri, 570 days now. One student of Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, 542 days. You just want to wonder what is the fate of this student, especially the girls. I mean, the male children may just be indoctrinated and then made into child soldiers, which in itself is another despicable act. But you want to shudder at the thought of what the female captives will be going through. Some of them may have been married off. Some of them may have been forcefully, they may have been raped and all of that. Some attendant health issues, and it's just saddening. These children just wanted to go to school.
Another illegal baby making factory.
I mean, it's just really, really not very fair on them. And we hope that the security authorities and the government itself will exercise political will to bring these children back and reunite them with their families. Not just these ones, but the others who we don't know what they were about, but that the government knows about. I pray that they return safely. But that's all on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, moving ahead to the Nation newspaper, we have the headline as presidential poll, G5 keeps PDP supporters in suspense. This is a very interesting, headline, as we're still talking about the G5 governors and, them keeping supporters in suspense. The fact that you're still, trying to put it out there, the people should either vote for this person or not this person.
When you have a party and
exactly.
a candidate.
Yes. I mean, it is, you can actually, disagree with your party. About the candidates, the presidential candidates.
But first, just win the election. Just win or lose. Lose together or win together.
If you have grievances and they've not been addressed, you're left with two options. You either just keep quiet and follow through, or you leave the party. But I don't see any of the G5 governors doing that. Others can decide to do that. They only have few months, to leave office. But Makinde has a lot at stake. He's still trying to run. He has only spent 4 years in office. Still trying to run for another 4 years, and so he has a lot to lose. But then the G5 governors are putting their people or PDP supporters in suspense. Is really something not good at all.
All right, that's we can just breeze through the Nation news.
Yes. So one of the writers says Makinde to announce preferred candidates, like we said. Then Group protest exclusion of Atiku's name on list. I wonder what that list is, but you know, the body of the major details of the news would be in the, you know, in the papers.
Yes, and something interesting happened in Lagos, in Ibadan yesterday. Let me butt in, sorry. During that campaign, you can see Governor Wike was around. While he was speaking, supporters started shouting, Atiku, and you know, because the PDP people, you know, had already said they will vote for Atiku regardless of Makinde's position. So it was quite, you know, some sort of a drama that Wike was speaking, and of course his people were shouting
Atiku, and it's something to point out to Makinde or every other G5 exactly,
line,
so, or to, you know what line to do. All right, so above the nameplate we have all APC governors behind Tinubu, Soli affirms. Well, this is something to discuss about the APC. I think the APC is really showing a lot of maturity in this. I'm not saying all these governors that are allegedly supporting Tinubu are really supporting
the outcome
exactly
of the primaries,
but
they've said that
they have decided to either, you know, keep things within the party on the wraps, or to just decide not to, you know, make a fuss of it, you know, on the dailies. Now the council autonomy are headache on constitution amendment, and then 22 fuel stations sealed for selling above approved price. Aregbeshola's men in Osun APC campaign team, that's 22 fuel stations selling, you know, sealed, you know, for selling above approved price. I think is a good, it's a good one, it's a good step towards this, because we've had all this disturbing queues, having to queue for a very long hour, and you know, very long hours, and you know, not getting full at the end of the day. You have to go buy from all these black markets.
Wow.
And also, you know, fuel stations that were approved selling black markets is really not good. So I'm happy that the government has done something to nip that on the bud a bit.
Well, we hope that translates to more petrol in petrol stations, and that the fuels disappear, the queues rather disappear completely. We'll move over quickly to the Guardian newspaper now, and the banner headline there says 2023 tame inflation, insecurity, fuel subsidy, experts tell government. And the riders are quite about 4 there. 1 on wrong steps ahead of elections, a significant year for Nigeria, says Ajibola. How electoral outcome would determine economic progress. Inflation, cost of living crisis among major challenges. And then below that story, how cost of production, import dependence undermine national drug security. That's a big story of The Guardian on pages 6 and 7. Kudos to the NDLEA. We've been seeing videos and pictures of some of their busts. Very, very nice there. And then below the nameplate, NFIU talks tough on cash withdrawal limits, threatens offenders with imprisonment, which should have been done quite some time ago. EFCC shouldn't be in existence. Nigerian constitution faulty, says Agbakoba. Olisa Agbakoba and the EFCC have been having a back and forth recently, especially over the issue with Kogi State and some of the financial issues surrounding a supposed cousin of the governor, Yaya Bello. Federal government to transfer 613 rehabilitated repentant terrorists to state. Again, some persons are against that move, but then let's see how it turns out for Nigeria.
I'm against it as well. I don't think, of course, it's the right time to
reintegrate them.
Yes, especially to states.
Well, those against Obi's endorsement by OBJ don't mean well for Nigeria, says Ohaneze Ndigbo. But that's quite expected, isn't it? They will support their own, and that's how it is in Nigeria. We'll actually leave it at that on the newspaper review segment of the show this morning. When we come from this break, we'll be bringing you our guest who will be speaking to some of the issues surrounding Nigeria's 2023 budget and some of the very disheartening information that we're getting, some of the very dire statistics about the nation's finances. To stay with us, we'll bring you our guest after this break.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Eva is pounding current events, traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast. Detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
According to the words of Michael Forbes, one who never asks questions either knows everything or nothing. Watch me as I ask the questions you think no one wants to answer. Even questions it appears no one has got the guts to ask. My name is Femi Adifila and I've got the gut. Let's ask the pertinent questions and watch as we get answers.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West, and Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around you. Yup, we've got you covered because your girls got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join me, Chocolate Cassie, on Eccentric as we take you into every bit of the juiciest news, fashion, music, movie updates, and other trending conversations. Together on the show, we'll get personal with your favorite celebrities via phone call, Zoom, or even live here in the studio. Eccentric will be showing on your TV screen on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
All right, thank you so much for sticking with us on Western Spring Television. Morning Spring is the program where we bring it to you as it is, where it drops from, and when it drops. You already know what we do here. We bring you insightful newspaper analyses and, of course, engaging interviews to help you make sense of some of the issues affecting you as a person and as a Nigerian living in this country. We're reaching you live from Star Times Channel 190 DTT platform, and you can follow us on all our social media handles at Facebook and Instagram, Western Spring Television, on Twitter at WSTV_NG, and of course on YouTube, Western Spring Television. Remember to subscribe to our channel when you find us there. We're now joined live in the studio by one of Nigeria's finest, analysts. He's an economic historian, a senior lecturer, an associate professor, I must say, at the prestigious Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. Dr. Adetunji Ogunyemi joins us on the show this morning. Good morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, we look forward to you becoming a full professor.
Thank you so much.
So we understand that you just got back from Rwanda, is it?
The Gambia.
The Gambia.
Gambia.
How was your
Okay.
sabbatical?
That was beautiful. I was also at Furabe. West Africa's first modern university. But principally, I was in the Gambia on leave to rest and to recuperate.
Oh, well, you're looking
more than
well
14
rested.
years of work at the Oberpala University.
All right. So, Dr. Ogunyemi, are we going broke anytime soon as a nation?
If we continue on this trajectory, we are most likely to go bankrupt. That's the truth. Why do I say this? At present, or even let's begin from June last year, our total indebtedness was 42 trillion naira. 42 trillion. By November of last year, the Debt Management Office informed us that our indebtedness was 44 trillion naira. Now, if it was 44 trillion naira, and we intend to borrow additional 8.8 trillion to be able to fund the current deficit in our budget of 21.83 trillion, it will mean that we are at the precipice, and that is not good enough. I think a moratorium ought to be applied at this level.
Well, the president just signed the 2023 appropriation bill into law. What is your assessment? It happens to be the highest ever in Nigeria's history. What is your, on the whole, holistic assessment of that particular budget?
The highest ever in Nigeria's history. Yes, that's true. 21.8 trillion. It's not a joke. That's significant. But it is still grossly inadequate in terms of our needs. But what do we really need? What we need are the infrastructure, particularly economic infrastructure, electricity, roads, bridges, the good schools, good hospitals, where reagents, laboratories, where we have the equipment and other things. But the problem we do have is that we have the problem of insufficient revenue. Our accruals and our receipts are just problematic. Do you know that the totality of our budget, as big as we think it is just about 36 billion American dollars. That is barely enough, just barely enough to be able to just do electricity. In fact, by the projections of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, Nigeria would need not less than 20 billion American dollars every year for 10 years to be able to do electricity alone. Just electricity. And the total budget you have is 36, just about. So the problem is that we do not generate enough revenue. And as a result of that, we have to resort to borrowing. And it is not good enough.
All right, so Doctor, what's the solution to that, generating enough revenue? The solutions are two. I would rather say three. The first is, first of all, to block leakages in the existing revenue pool. Leakages. And what do I mean? Areas where government ought not to spend money on ghost workers should be blocked. Ghost workers are workers who are actually not on ground, but who are in the personal payroll. And the third one is, the second one is the issue that has to do with, rejigging our tax infrastructure, tax profile, to be able to make those who are not paying now to be included in those who are actually going to pay. In other words, we are not saying that taxes be increased, but that those are not within the tax net should be brought in. And there are huge leakages in that, particularly in respect of waivers. People who are already rich and they are investing in the country, and you waive taxes for them for 4 years, 5 years, and when they ought to revert to the tax net, you still extend it, or you say nothing about it. No, that is leakages. That is not good enough. And then the third issue is the issue that has to do with expanding the capacity of the country to exploit resources available to it for the development of its citizens, particularly in terms of creating jobs. Because if you do not create jobs, you do not get people, economic agents, to tax enough to recoup and to get enough for development. These are the three things I would rather say we should do.
Well, towards the end of last year, Ghana, our nearby neighbor and family members, declared a default in their debt servicing and payment. Now, we've been seeing figures bandied around that by next year, Nigeria will be indebted to the tune of 77 trillion naira.
Yes.
I'd like to ask you again, are we are we on the brink of insolvency? Do you see us toe in the line of Ghana declaring a debt default and maybe bankruptcy in the nearest future?
A lot will depend upon who becomes the president of Nigeria in the year 2023, beginning from May. That's the first one. It will also depend upon whether we are realistic, we are truthful to ourselves by addressing the issue of PMS subsidy on fuel. If we are truthful to ourselves, there's nowhere in the sane world where government will be using about 50% of its total internal revenue. In fact, about 40% of its totally generated revenue to service just one product. Just one product.
So you agree with the removal of subsidy?
Of course. It's not economically sustainable. You don't do that. At any rate, you are subsidizing inefficiency. Allow the economic agents and the forces of demand and supply to set the price level. It is not that the government cannot intervene in other areas of social interventions to be able to equalize, particularly for the weakest members of the society, those things that ought to be done so that it cushions the effect for them. But I insist, economic rationality demands that fuel subsidy in Nigeria be expunged. Yes.
So you do not see us?
Yes, that's the first. That's the first. This is the second dependence. First, economic manager who's going to be president of Nigeria from May. 2, oil subsidy issue. 3, the issue that has to do with our borrowing profile. We must just do something about our borrowing profile. First of all, we are overdrawing on the accounts of the federal government with the CBN with respect to ways and means. Ways and means means that government is overdrawing its accounts. The CBN is giving money to the federal government, which money the CBN does not have.
So where does the CBN get the money from?
It is called quantitative easing. You credit the account of a government for money that you do not have in yourself. Simple. In other words, you either go directly to print money or you just adjust figures. Or most countries that are in dire financial straits use this methodology, but they use it sparingly. Sparingly.
But it is our own.
But it is doable, it is legal. But in our own provision, particularly in sections 38 and 39 of the CBN Act, it is provided that when such overdrafts by government are done through the process or instrumentality of ways and means, that money must not exceed 25% of the existing budget. That's number 1. 2, when it is given, it must be reimbursed in the next fiscal year. Otherwise, no further facility should be offered. But the CBN has consistently been offering it, regardless of the fact that the federal government has not been paying back. But you hardly can, the CBN governor hardly do anything about that. Because it's a matter of political sagacity and the structure of Nigeria constitutional provisions. I mean, how much can the CBN governor protest to the president and say, sir, we won't give you any money?
Especially when he's appointed.
Of course, when he's appointed by the same. And our institutions have not grown to such an extent that they can defend themselves. Immediately you see that happen, then a lot of people will raise, ethnic jingoists, all manners of religious bigots will now begin to raise protestations to say, oh, it is because he's a Christian. It's because he's a Igbo. That's why they remove him.
Doctor, please, let's come back to the issue of debt servicing and debt payment. What is the difference?
The difference is very clear. And the difference makes debt servicing and debt repayment to be significantly far apart in terms of economic implications and outcomes. 1, to service debt means to pay an amount of interest on that debt. Not only that you pay that interest, you pay the interest in full. If you fail to pay that interest in full, that portion that you have refused to pay will be added to the original debt and the compound interest will be worked. Such that if you borrow 10 billion, for example, in, say, in the year 2010, and you have not been paying fully the interest, by year 2020, you may actually be owing 30 billion, even though you originally borrowed 10 billion. That is what unserviced, we call it amortization. That is why if you do not service if you don't do your amortization properly, it can put you in incalculable financial problems. Now, debt repayment is different from debt servicing. Debt repayment means you pay the principal. In other words, you pay the total debt. So there's no way, there's nothing to pay as interest or anything. You just pay. But it will be bad economy. It will be bad economics for any government, any person, any economic agent to go pay a debt that has not fallen due. If you borrow 10 billion or say 10 trillion, and it will fall due, say, in the year 2026, and you are paying it because you have money in the year 2024, that's an unreasonable behavior, because that money which you have can be invested elsewhere. Interest worked on it and generated, and then you pay. You don't pay your debt when it has not fallen due. That is why Sukuk loans, for example, that Osun State has borrowed, about 60% of the Osun State Sukuk loans have not fallen due because the tenure was about between 15 and 30 years. Between 15 and 30 years. You may say that, well, future generations are sentenced to paying the debt. Yes, but the future generations also benefit from the economic of scale of the projects for which the money had been used. You see, it's comme ci, comme ça.
Well, Dr. Ogunyemi, we are still looking at this issue of debt servicing and repayment.
Yes.
Nigeria is to spend about 80.6% of its revenue on debt servicing.
Yes.
Where does this leave us as a people? How do we meet our other needs, considering the fact that the picture you've painted is quite grim?
Yeah.
We're in dire straits. What are the implications of this?
First, we must admit the truth about ourselves, that our budget and our fiscal system are not sustainable. That's the first. A person will do himself a great good if he first of all admits that he's ill, if indeed is ill. If he's sick, he must first of all admit, because that's the point at which he can now begin to do diagnosis and treatment. So the idea of assuming that we are not ill and then continue to begin to dig deep in a hole in which we are in, it's not good enough. I mean, otherwise, why would government be contemplating borrowing the more to the scale of 8.8 trillion? You have a budget of 21.83 trillion, and you are going to borrow almost 12 trillion out of it. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. So we are actually owing, and the status of our debt is such that it is consuming about 90%. You say 86 point something. I tell you, it is between 90 and 92%. That's the truth. Because if you work in what is called supplementary budget into the calculus of what is given in the substantive budget, the totality of what you are going to have is that we are using 90%, far above 90% of our debt, of our current revenue to service our debt. In other words, to pay interest on our debt. Not to pay the debt.
Paying the debt itself.
Not paying the debt. To just pay interest in full on our debt. So where are we? See, we are in dire straits. And it is the duty of patriots at this level to rise in favor of the Federation by working assiduously in 3 institutions. I call these institutions the cash cow of the country. 1, the Federal Inland Revenue Service. 2, Customs Service. 3, NNPC. To ensure that all monies collected are actually remitted, well, NNPC PLC, that the NNPC remits the full total dividends to the federating units to the federation account by Section 162 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic as altered. Full. Not that NNPC should retain a portion of it and then claim that it has used it in JVCC, joint venture cash calls.
Oh, but Dr. Ogunyemi, there have been reports recently that the NNPC had 0 remittance.
Oh, of course, it must have, because NNPC is now a public limited liability company. Because it is no longer a cash cow that just directly deals with the federation account. It must first of all generate revenue, generate its income, declare it at an AGM, and then distribute dividends. Because it is now being owned 50% by the Federal Ministry of Finance and 50% by the confederating states. That is, the federal government, the states, and the local government of Nigeria. They are the shareholders in that company. And it can only declare dividends, no longer pay revenue or taxes to the federation account. That's the difference. And then the customs service must collect enough revenue such that monies collected are appropriately remitted or transferred to the federation account. And then the Federal Inland Revenue Service must ensure that monies collected actually reach the CBN, actually. Not that it should retain it in sundry banks, at times in more than 200 accounts in several banks, and then do what is called warehousing. To warehouse a fund means to put it in account where the Auditor General of the Federation may not be able to see it. So you cannot say that the money is stolen, but the money is not in the account of where it can be used. It's a methodology of corruption, which the bureaucrats of Nigeria have perfected. They have perfected this since 1962. Oh, that's the truth.
Well, before, I'd like to take a detour before my colleague comes in now. At some point, we were looking at controversies surrounding stamp duty collection.
Yes.
That was a problem between the Postal Service and the Federal Inland Revenue Service, and the Ministry of Finance had to come in at some point. That would have been a revenue generation point for Nigeria if it had been managed properly. What were your thoughts at the time on that controversy?
Stamp duties are duties you pay when you do financial transactions. Any financial transaction that exceeds a particular amount of money, you pay an amount to government. For example, if you transfer maybe 50,000 naira to your friend from your wallet or your bank account to his bank account, 50 naira is deducted from that as a sort of that. Now, that money deducted is called stamp duties. The same thing is when you sign an agreement, and that agreement involves an amount of money. Let's say buying land. You will see that even in old times, you see people will buy stamps from post office and put it and sign across that. That's a duty. But today, it's no longer about stamps. It's about money remitted. An amount of money that you have not remitted in stamp duties, which you ought to remit, makes that transaction illegal, and the two parties to be criminals. So, the Federal Ministry of Finance, by the instrumentality of the Finance Control and Management Act, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, Cap F26, LFA 2004, says it should be collected by the ministry, not by the Postal Service. And it is not in the place of the Nigerian Postal Service to begin to argue with respect to a Federal Executive Council's directive. I mean, how dare you? You don't do that. Because you are trying to extend your mandate beyond what the laws provide. It is in the Finance Control and Management Act. It is an act of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So it is not the place of the Postal Service. It is true that the Postal Service was collecting this money before. It's true. But the government has redirected it. Why? Because the Finance Act and the operation of the Companies Act, together with the Finance Act, has domiciled this responsibility within the Federal Ministry of Finance. And Federal Ministry of Finance has delegated it. I mean, the argument should stop there. So the issue will be, how has it been managed? How has it been managed? When it is collected, it is the CBN that you receive the money immediately. It goes in an account into the CBN, because the CBN is the banker, is the bank of last resort, and is the chief banker of the government at any rate. So it receives the money. So, but it is doubtful whether the CBN has been appropriately remitting that money into the federation account so that it will be available for sharing in the proportion stated in the act. So that's where the issue is.
So, Doctor, let's come back to the strength of the Naira. The Naira is at the weakest level so far, about 750 to a dollar. Yes. How do we rescue the Naira?
Well, in a country where you have two systems of exchange determining the value of a currency, distortions are possible, round tripping are also possible, and all manners of rent seekers will also operate. At present in Nigeria, we have the official platform, official rate, which is between 420 and 436. I think the budget is predicated on 436 to the dollar. And we have the parallel, which oscillates between 650 to 750 at times to the dollar. In other words, 750 naira to the dollar in the parallel market. You can also call them bureau de change if you like, no problems. But the problems is that the creme de la creme society, those who have the power, the influence, can go obtain money from the CBN at the official rate, and then without adding any value, just put it at the parallel rate and then collect the difference. That's called the rent seeking. Now, that kind of rent seeking behavior is already made illegal by the Nigerian Finance Act and by the CBN Act. It is called round tripping. So that's number one thing that has affected the value of the Nigerian naira. You know, privileged people taking from the official and putting into the parallel or the black market, and then selling and getting the difference. Now, the second one is speculators. Speculators are the most dangerous to any economy. They are in all economies, be they developing or underdeveloped, such as ours. Speculators are people who will just, without factoring in the economic variables, demand, supply, and the issues of investment in the system, just speculate and say, I think naira will be about 800 naira to the dollar next year. That's all. Just because they are influential, they are part of the money market, they speculate. The market believes them. In fact, the market believes speculators more than they believe the law. And then the value begins to change. A lot of people begin to speculate and say, the big man has said that the naira value will depreciate, we do this, and then the market begins to obey it. Speculation. You can never control speculation. The only thing you can do is that you can apprehend speculators. How do you apprehend speculators? When people see that you match your official with the parallel, and the difference is just about, if you like, 2 or 3 naira difference, the possibility is that if you need official rate, you are most likely to go do it legally. The third and the final one is that even private Nigerians, when they get hard currency, say naira, say euro, say British pound sterling, do they go and put it in their banks? They go to the bureau de change to change it, to get the huge difference in terms of bureau de change or parallel market. 700, 720. You don't take it to the bank and say, bank, give me 436 naira per dollar. When your friends transfer that hard currency to you abroad, do you take it to the bank? You hold it. Even when you are withdrawing from the bank, you get it in the hard currency, and then migrate to the if you like. I don't want to use any Nigerian balance here, but we have a group of Nigerians who are mostly into currency trading. They are from a particular part of the country. They do it more than any other part. You go to them and you buy it and you sell it. So you can't put something on nothing and expect it to stand. You can't be appropriating and reprobating at the same time. If you say that the value of the naira is not good, what are you also doing at your private levels?
Well, that seems to be a multifaceted issue that has to be tackled from the way you're saying it now.
Exactly.
At different levels.
Exactly.
And in addition to that, like my colleague was saying, some time ago, the CBN banned some foreign exchange operators in the hopes that it will crash the black or parallel market now and then increase the value of the naira. But that did not seem to work. And some persons have come to say it was counterproductive for you to have banned them. There was little or no effect. How then, when that kind of thing did not really have an effect, how then will all of these things you're saying work?
See, we have to be truthful to ourselves. Do you know what really can do the fundamental difference in increasing the value of the naira? It is productivity. How much of production are you doing in your country? How much of exporting are you doing? You are demanding for foreign currencies all the time to import even toothpicks. You heard me right. Toothpicks. To import cutlery. To import, not to talk of importing rice. Our food import in Nigeria alone in a year is in excess of 8 trillion. That's about a third of our budget. Now, some people will import what we do have the equivalent here in Nigeria. People import, do you know people import furniture in this country? They import it from Turkey, principally. Is that not a shame? Now, that put pressures on the naira. If it put pressures on the naira, then, I mean, the forces of demand and supply are so clear. You demand a currency more than you do your own. Of course, your own will fall in relation to the value. It's as simple as that. Can we please do something about production? And you don't increase production in a country and export more so that you earn more foreign currency, and your currency will no longer be under pressure if you do not do something about 4 critical economic infrastructures. And what are they? Electricity, roads, security that has to do with the ports. Importing, using your ports should not be hellish. To go to the Nigerian port, I tell you, it is hellish. Have counted on my fingertips that you will pass through 36 clearing sites to be able to bring a simple product such as a camera from the US. You want to clear here the Nigerian port. 36 points. 36. Not to talk of the hellish nature of transporting in between that port, in Apapa port, if you like, even roll on, roll up, even in Cocoa port, even in Calabar port, the difference of transporting from that port to the hinterland where it will be used is another kettle of fish entirely. You now see multiple taxation.
Those local governments, are they legal? Are they legal?
Yes, the ones at the ports are legal.
36 of them?
Oh, of course, and it tells you about multiplicity of our institutions. The way we multiply institutions. Have you noticed that EFCC is not doing anything different from what the police should do? Have you noticed that? That ICPC is not doing anything different from they are approaching corruption. It is in the criminal code. Why do we have the EFCC and the ICPC? And you know, the two of them are actually confronting the greater anti-corruption body, which is the Code of Conduct Bureau, which is stipulated in Section 153 of the Constitution of the Republic of Nigeria, in the 5th schedule, in the 3rd schedule. So, duplication and multiplication of institutions have led to a situation in which we are doing more about governing than about creating wealth.
Just today, about 2 lawyers spoke of EFCC being scrapped. Are you supporting that?
Because EFCC was directly requested in 2003, of course, the Act promulgated in that year, although the Act was also amended in 2004, 2003, then 2004 amendment, by the international body, which requested that we set it up so that they could arrest the issue of money laundering and the issue that has to do with terrorism. President Olusegun Obasanjo then, don't forget, very insightful, yes, but also very combative, set up that body. So I would have rather said that EFCC should be a department in the Nigeria police. Not that you scrap it totally, but to be a department in Nigeria police.
Seeing as police officers actually had Ibrahim Magu, for instance, was
yes, but the law also says that the law gives preference to police officers, and I think this is the first time that a non-police officer is heading it. Bawa, I think. Yes. This is the first time. But the law actually prefers police officers to be there. But the truth of the matter is that it is a duplication of police duties. Do you know that to do policing, it's not only the Nigeria police that is doing policing. Standard Organization of Nigeria is doing policing. How about that? Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps is doing policing. Policing of our infrastructure, particularly pipelines and transformers. They are the one protecting it. To do policing does not mean that you must be a member of the Nigeria police. WAEC is doing policing. If you go write WAEC, and are they not going to police you to ensure that you are not cheating? That's policing. What of a quarantine? Is it not doing policing? What of immigration? That's policing the borders. I mean, even forest guards are policing the forest so that the flora and the fauna can be balanced. And you do not overfell our trees. I mean, the policing work need not be that you are in the Nigeria police, but I tell you, it must be a department in the Nigeria police. You can call it different names, but I tell you, it must have the same budget head and finance and be recognizable by its code in the office of the Accountant General of the Federation. Exactly.
So before we look at diversification of, the successive governments have said that we need to stop looking towards oil, but recently we've been looking at oil in Bauchi, Gombe, and yesterday we read about Borno and Niger. Before you speak on that, I want to ask you, do you think that customs and immigrations are underperforming in terms of their contribution to the budget's revenue generation? Do you think that they're underperforming?
Yes. The revenue across in Nigeria show that. And the amount of money they are retaining, that is the cost of collection, the government permits the revenue generating institutions to retain 15% of what they have generated as money to administer the generation. To me, I think that is excessive. I think they should not retain more than 5%. Ditto for the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the cost of collection. Ditto for NNPC. So because it permits for a lacuna, a vacuum, by which corrupt dealings can be done with the resources of the Federation, especially in a particular area of financing of NNPC's works, which is called Joint Venture Cash Calls, JVCC. It is done 100% in foreign currency. So I don't think that they have the temerity and going by Section 80, 81, and Section 162 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as altered, those such monies ought to first of all report at the Federation account, and then the National Assembly appropriates them. I agree, 5%, yes, 6% at most for retainage.
Yeah, so we've moved from 6.1% to 6.1 trillion naira, or 6.31 trillion naira, sorry, from debt servicing to 6.6 trillion naira now. Now, is it time to start looking away from oil? And if we are to look away from oil, where can we look towards?
We cannot look away from oil. We can only look in addition to oil, other areas. For example, we can look at what is called diaspora remittances. Do you know a lot of Nigerians? They call them the Japa generation, whatever that means. Those Nigerians who work abroad, they remit into this country hard currency. Do you know the amount? To the tune of 22 billion American dollars. That is about 2/3 of Nigeria's total income. 2/3 of our budget for just diaspora remittances. We can look at that. We can export our best, or some of our best, not all of them, and then they become resources, human resources, by which we get foreign exchange. It's a source of income, and no one should minimize it, because the CBN knows that when the chicken comes home to roost, it is on the diaspora remittances that it falls on in critical times to do ways and means. That's number one. We can also look at issues that has to do with, can we please do electricity? See, you aren't going to move an inch forward in productivity if you don't resolve the issue of electricity. It was Dr. Agagu, former governor of Nigeria, for Ondo State, and former minister in respect of power and I think solid minerals, who estimated that to generate 1 megawatt of electricity, you will need 300,000 American dollars. Now, Nigeria needs the minimum to just have 12 hours electricity in a day throughout Nigeria's 923,000 square kilometers territory. You will need 40,000 megawatts. 40,000 megawatts. I tell you, that will be in excess. You will need more than 10 billion American dollars to generate that. Now, there has never been a time in Nigeria that we have generated anything more than 7,000 megawatts. Even as we speak, we are generating less than 7,000 megawatts. And even when you generate 7,000 megawatts, you do not transmit the same, because our transmission lines are weak. They are weak because they are very old, many of them unserviceable. And so a lot of electricity generated from Egbin, from Shiroro, from Papalanto, from, if you like, our oldest dam in Kenji, a lot of the electricity generated go to waste because they cannot be evacuated from the point of generation to the point of usage. Stated. Because you need to generate, to transmit, to distribute, and to sell before it enters into the house, before it enters into the factories and the industries for use. In between that, almost about 30% of electricity generated in Nigeria goes to waste. It's a shame. So we need to do something about electricity, because it is at the core of modern production lines. What are you going to do today in this current world without using electricity? Is it weather? Vulcanizing? What is it? What is it? Is it even hairdressing? What are you going to do? So if government is generating less than 10% of what it generates to be able to ensure productivity, how dare any non-Nigerian expect that we are going to be better off? It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Well, Doctor, just before Temitope comes in again, are we at the point where we need to declare an emergency, a national emergency, on some of this sector, some of these economic issues? Some of these are scary economic realities. Do we need to get to the point?
I think I agree with you. We need to declare economic emergency in Nigeria.
And what would that mean for us?
It will mean, first of all, that the elite of Nigeria, I hope you know that politics and governance is done at the level of elite. It's not for the ordinary man. The ordinary man does not lead. It's a crowd. The critical mass that govern must agree, multi-party, in all the parties, 4 minimum irreducibles that should be beyond politicking. Education, creating jobs, building economic infrastructure, securing the fatherland. These four irreducible should be beyond politicking. Therefore, if a government begins a project, say on education, by all means, let the succeeding government, even by another party, not detract from that path. Let elite just agree. How will they agree? At the level of the National Assembly, at the level of political parties, at the level of a national conference, to be heard by the critical mass of Nigeria. Nigeria is Employers Consultative Assembly, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the academia, leaders of political parties, those who are in the cash cows of the country, NCC, FIRS, Customs Service, NNPC, and if you like, to some extent, with the CBN. Let them coalesce. There should not be more than 300 persons, because if there are more than that, too many hands spoil the broth. Divide them into different groups: finance, development, infrastructure, education, social development. And then derive from them whatever comes from the communique becomes the minimum irreducible manifesto of every political party in Nigeria. So what a political party in Nigeria only needs to do to make its own manifesto different from the other was just to do a little addition here and there, little shopping here and there to just make it different. See, if we do not agree together in this country as touching on our development, we will have policy somersault, policy inconsistency, reinventing this wheel every year, every time a government comes into power, and it's going to lead to a huge waste. I think it is enough that politicking has injured the fatherland. Let leaders just agree among themselves as we move this country forward.
So how seriously is the coming government going to work to revive this economy? And what are the immediate steps they should take to, quickly intervene in the economy?
As for this current government, I think the hope is lost. We just wish it well that it just leaves us alone. But the coming government, when it comes into power, it should do nothing less than these things we have highlighted. Call stakeholders, regardless of parties. Because some of Nigeria's best are in all the political parties. I mean, is it a sin to harness such things, such great people, and their talents? Harness them by all means. Let there be an economic emergency, particularly on the issue of debt and indebtedness. And then look at how to create jobs. Because if you do not create jobs, your best hands will never stay in the best areas. They will be looking for criminally minded issues to solve their immediate needs. And some that are technicians will even go and be riding motorbikes for daily income. They are technicians already. They are the powerhouse of the economy. Welders, bricklayers, masons, hairdressers, vulcanizers. These are the powerhouse. They have been abandoning their trade and be riding motorbikes for daily. That's disastrous. So we need to do something about putting them in their appropriate places. Give marching order to Nigeria Polytechnics. Let them, for God's sake, stop competing with the universities. Give them marching orders to create that critical mass of human resource persons to drive the economy. Because without the Polytechnics input in this country, or the technical schools, we are not going anywhere. We aren't going anywhere. I think that's what government that is coming should do. The issue of job creation, economic emergency, infrastructure, and continue with the current infrastructural development. Not abandoning them. Continue with them. But putting a moratorium on the borrowing. And then, of course, suspending the very calamitous financial system called subsidy.
All right. Well, you've taken some of our questions about what you'd advise the next president to do. Before we come back to your sabbatical and get some experience of how it was outside the country, let's look at the budget itself now. The budget maintains recurrent expenditures at approximately 8.27 trillion, capital expenditure 5.35, and of course debt servicing 6.6 trillion naira. Now, some key allocations are 285 billion naira to the Federal Ministry of Defense, 134.9 to the Federal Ministry of Health, 195 to the Federal Ministry of Power, and 153.7 to the Federal Ministry of Education. Now, we're looking at 153 to the Federal Ministry of Education. About 185.5 or something billion naira is for severance package for lawmakers. When you compare that to what education is getting, does it speak to misplacement of priorities for you?
I suspect you must have been using the figures given by the President of the Federal Republic in his broadcast. Well, with respect to budget, I mean, you are not far from what you should do. That's correct. But don't forget that there were huge inconsistencies in those figures. The National Assembly has recognized it, and the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, when she was giving analysis of that budget, wasn't on the day before yesterday, straighten out those figures. It is even regrettable that you could have arithmetic problems.
Yes, I was going to come to that.
Yes, significant arithmetic problems.
The House was supposed to sit on the budget on the 24th or thereabout. They had to postpone by 4 days
because of arithmetic problems.
Errors.
Yes.
in the budget.
Well, I just wish I wish my fatherland well. Oh, I wish my country be better governed. But let's leave that for another day. Now, the statistics really for severance is 288.2. The statistics really for debt servicing is actually 6.5. And the statistics for capital expenditure is 5.97. So when we were trying to reconcile the amount for recurrent, for capital, recurrent non-debt, and for capital expenditure, we discovered that there was inconsistency in the total amount government was earmarking for expenditure. In fact, if you had the amount for transfer to amortization, that is for payment of debt, and you had it to recurrent, you had that to capex, it should give you the total budget. But there is a disarticulation of about 550 billion naira. So how can that huge difference? And some people were there working out this, were they no econometrists, statisticians? I mean, in the budget office, you could have such a gap, such a statistical arithmetic error. But let's leave that. Regrettable. But it's for another day. The truth of the matter is that the figures that we already have now, with respect to borrowing, we expect to borrow 8.8 trillion. That's what we expect to borrow. That's what the federal government says it expects to borrow. Already, through ways and means, government has a liability of 20.7 trillion. At present, total debt, 44 trillion. When you add that together, it's approaching 75 trillion. That's going to be Nigeria's foreseeable indebtedness by December 31st, 2023. You don't need a soothsayer to let you know that that's suicidal, because you only need to just compare that to the total revenue. See, by putting debt side by side GDP, it is not a helpful way of looking at statistics, because GDP does not pay debt. What pay debt is revenue. So put your debt vis-a-vis revenue. In a budget of 21.83 trillion, 21.83 trillion, you will only generate revenue of 9.7 trillion. But you will borrow internally 7.7. You will borrow from internally 7.7, externally 1.7. You will draw down on existing bilateral and multilateral institutions 1.7. You are doing a 10.7, and then there is a gap of 550 billion that is not accounted for. That is, to do deficit budgeting means to plan to spend an amount of money, which money you do not have. I mean, that's to put it in a very simple term. You are planning to spend money that you do not have, and then you begin to scavenge, harvest, look for all manners of ways and means, including illegal means and means, to meet up your deficit. And after all these accruals, you still have a gap of 550 billion unaccounted for. See, the fatherland is in dire straits.
So, do you think that there's been a lot of talk about cutting down on cost of governance? How much will this save us if we cut down on ESTA codes, on the number of advisors, the number of people drawing salaries from government coffers? Yes, so security aids like it.
I can't agree with you more. I've said this on several fora. I've made papers, memoranda, sent it to those who should know. particularly at the national planning level, when some of us were invited to intervene certain area. See, the cost of governing Nigeria is far, far too much. And when your cost of governing a country exceeds your cost of creating wealth, creating jobs, and securing the fatherland, then what you are doing is economic crisis. You are creating economic crisis. See, do you know that we have, at the level of local government, we have 768 local government in Nigeria and 6 area councils in Abuja. If you put that together, it will be 774. Please take note that by Section 6 of Section 6 Nigeria, all these local governments that we have in Nigeria are to be funded from the federation account. That's number one. You have 36 state government. You have one government of the FCT and one government of the federal government. 814 governments. We are clearly overgoverned. Now, if you check out the recurrent budget is where you will see the picture of whether a country is devoting more money to governance than to creating wealth. The recurrent expenditure that Nigeria is to have in this current 2023 budget is 78%. Capital expenditure, which creates wealth, is 22%. Where in the world do you spend more money on maintaining your car, your phone, your everything, than putting food on the table and paying your students' school fees? Where in the world? And then you turn around and expect development? You ain't gonna get it. You ain't gonna get it. Capital expenditure grows the economy. You devote 22%. In fact, those provisions for capital development are hardly fully funded until the year passes. In fact, the current year, by November of that year, the total amount for the capital budget was only funded to the tune of 20%. And then it is rolled back by extending the life of that budget into almost April of this year, which is a breach of the Financial Year Act 1980, which defines Nigeria Financial Year Act as a period of January 1 to December 31. And government is breaking its own law and confusing the CBN. The CBN reportage is only on January 1 to December 31. So how will you confuse the CBN to report? Which year will the CBN will now say that it's reporting on the budget? Which year? If your budget starts in the January and then does not end in December of that year, it extends to March of the following year. So which year are we going to call the additional March? Will it not create a distortion between the reportage of the Auditor General of the Federation, Accountant General of the Federation, and the CBN with respect to current account? I think that Nigeria is not short of quality people to govern it. What we actually have is a situation in which people who ought to be there can never be there because of our power structure and our constitutional debility, which ought to be amended.
Temitope? Well, it's been quite an insightful one, but I also wonder, what sectors would you have loved to see more? Like you said, we spend more on governance than even securing the country.
Of course.
The budget for the National Assembly is higher than what the defense...
Let's give you something very interesting.
Is collected.
An amount equal to 288 billion is provided as severance. That is, legislators who have served Nigeria for the past 4 years.
Should they even be paid for that?
Apart from the fact that you pay them huge remuneration, you know, they are covered by Section 162 with respect to Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission. That's the body setting their remuneration. But in other civil servants, their remuneration are set by the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission. Can you imagine? In the same country, one sets for government worker, the other sets for government rulers. But let's leave that. 288 billion. I tell you, that's 73% of the total amount of money earmarked for federal universities. It will go to total number of people, 360 people in the House of Rep, 109 in the House of Senate. They will take it as severance. Not that they did not get their remuneration, not that they don't get their allowances, not that they don't get their salaries throughout the 4 years, but that they are living, and as they are living, we are giving them money to to make them live very well.
And some of them will come back again.
And some of them will come back again. And then another 4 years, we do a severance. See, we need to be serious.
So should that be cut down or totally, eradicated?
Expunged. Why do you need to pay severance allowance to somebody whose income has not ceased in a single day? Whose allowances are huge? Who is earning an amount of money far in excess the economic reality of Nigeria? Why do you need to sever them? Why? The argument of some people in the parliamentarians is that, after all, they don't collect pension. Are you supposed to collect pension?
For 7.
Is it not to serve? Oh, in other words, we are in trouble now that you are our senator. Are we in trouble? So we should go bankrupt because you are doing your senator for 4 years. Let some people be serious.
Well, talking about seriousness, before we end the show, what did you see in the Gambia that you would love to see in Nigeria?
I thought you would ask me about Bamako.
Okay, well, Bamako is troubled now.
Yes.
Insurgency.
Actually, I was trying to get a book done with respect to the economic history of West Africa.
Oh, we should.
Particularly the coastal economies. And so I had to visit the River Gambia, visit Furabe, and then be in Bamako, and times also be in Cape Coast. So I was traversing. And so what I discovered is the significant difference, for example, with respect to just Gambia alone, the sharp difference between our exchange rate. Do you know that the Gambia's currency is called Dalasi? And Dalasi is equal to 11.7 naira. $1. In a country, that is, if you get $1, the equivalent is 11 naira 70 kobo. In a country of just 2 million people, actually 1.97, 2 million people, a country much younger than Nigeria, a country that don't have anything other than fishing and groundnuts. And look at the difference. So if you hand $10,000, for example, what you are earning in Nigeria is times 11.7. That tells you what it is.
So
that's
what are their strongholds? How do they? What's their government
How were they able to do
like?
that?
Exactly.
Yes, I think they were able to do it by collapsing the official and the parallel rates. They were realistic, apart from other reasons. That's it. Although some people can say it's quite a small economy. Yes, I agree. The total budget of the Gambia is just $350 million. That is what an amount of money that one politician will use in campaigning in Nigeria. That's the total budget of the Gambia. Yeah.
Well, we hope to bring you back someday to talk about the monetization of our politics and how it affects government policies in the end. Because if someone is spending $350 million on campaign, when they get there, their priorities change, But well, we'd like to leave it at that this morning. We hope that we'll get free copies of your book when it's
you can be sure.
when signed copies.
You press.
All right, we've been speaking to Dr. Adetunji Ogunyemi, who's an economic historian. He's a lawyer too, a public affairs analyst, and an associate professor at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ife, Nigeria. He's been speaking to us about the 2023 budget and some of the contentious issues there. And thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you, sir.
I have been schooled. I've learned a lot of things.
Been enlightened myself.
Of course. Well, that's the interview segment of the program this morning. Temitope would be stepping up. Where would you be going? Do you have something to go get for us? Or? Well, we'll be doing a TGIF later after this show. I'll be bringing you what's trending after this break. Stay with us.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
According to the words of Michael Forbes, one who never asks questions either knows everything or nothing. Watch me as I ask the questions you think no one wants to answer. Even questions it appears no one has got the guts to ask. My name is Femi Adefila and I've got the gut. Let's ask the pertinent questions and watch as we get answers.
Evelyn Ohiole,
Hi.
King Eve. How are you today?
I'm good, I'm fine, I'm alive.
I really feel like she's not giving the right answer to the question. When one asks you, how are you? And you said, you're saying, I'm alive. It's very annoying, seriously. How are you? I'm fine. I feel I'm fine will be the right answer instead of I'm alive. Not that I asked you if you're dead before.
Go and check all these 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, everybody, they are extraordinarily sexually active.
I feel is being unnecessarily hyper when it comes to the issue of sex, because we talk about other topics and he feels so reserved. He really doesn't have anything much to say when it comes to other stuff. But when it's the issue of sex, I believe he's being unnecessarily hyper. That's when I have to pick an issue with him. I mean, it's just being unnecessarily there when we're talking about sex. Just like a child, his mom just got him his favorite chocolate or ice cream, very happy, doing as though if he doesn't have sex for a day, he's going to die.
When it comes to finance, women also support their husbands financially. You need me emotionally. You need me spiritually.
Cassie is an amazing person, but I hate the too much attachment to that gender. I need you spiritually, I need you mentally. I can get these things anywhere with money. If you go by the topic was, who does marriage favors the most? I know how many jobless women they marry every Saturday. They are saying it favors you, favor. Are they vague so?
Growing up, when I was in the world, we've heard of
Who are you now?
Well, MC Too Much said, he likes saying when I was in the world. And the last time I checked, but it looks a bit innocent, facially, but deep down, he's actually out of this world. We're all in the world now. As long as you're alive, you're in the world. So MC Too Much, I beg, when you talk about that, I don't want to hear that. Next time you talk about I kiss my words.
I think I have a problem with you saying ladies are champion, and that's the problem. Always trying to attach so much importance to that gender.
It's giving insecurity, it's giving low self-esteem, it's giving a blatant display of egoism, because at the end of the day,
Thank God it's Friday. We go rock 'em like my birthday. Welcome to the show. It is Spring Trends on Western Spring Television, where we bring you who's trending, what is trending, why they are trending, and what people are saying about the who, the what, and the why. Remember to follow us on all our social media platforms, on Facebook and Instagram at Western Spring Television, on YouTube, it's Western Spring Television, subscribe to our channel, and on Twitter at WSTV_NG. My name is Emmanuel Ujadegele. You can follow me on Twitter at EM Ujadikede. Now let's start with the political scene. Yesterday, presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in Edo State, Benin City, the capital of Edo State, and there was some shots fired yesterday. I'd like to show you what Asiwaju said about Obasanjo and Atiku.
Market in Abuja. Obasanjo and Atiku. Abi, you were not born. You were not in high school when they fought naked about accounting, stealing, using Nigerian money to buy cars for their girlfriends. Show me what is the better job that and I think was done before. Show me one you can find.
Well, you've heard presidential candidate of the APC, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, making very strong allegations there. So, President Olusegun Obasanjo, Kikiola Aremu Matthew, and Waziri Atiku Abubakar, did you people use Nigeria money to buy car for your girlfriend? We need your Asiwaju said his girlfriend, but did you buy cars for your babes? We need to know, and we need to know now. So after this show, you better pick my call, the both of you, and tell me if you spent our money on girls. All right? So let's leave politics now and get back to Lagos. We told you that last year, December, on the 7th and 25th, 2 persons were killed in Ajah axis of Lagos State by policemen. And as a result of that, the Lagos Police Command transferred all police officers from the Ajah police station. But yesterday, there was an accident. There was an incident on 3rd Mainland Bridge, and a policeman was affected. Right now, if you can see your screen, it will come up shortly. A policeman was a victim of a hit and run at Ilubiri, inward Simpson, and this has led to a serious traffic backlog towards 3rd Mainland Bridge. Now, you can see the reaction of the police spokesperson in Lagos. He said 35 minutes and just 7 retreats. Flip this, let it be a police van involved in a hit and run, and watch the retreats increase exponentially. Same way the many daily good deeds of the police are shunned, giving the false impression it's all about negativity and mediocrity. Now, how did people respond to this statement by the police spokesperson in Lagos? We begin with Son of Consolation. It says, your point exactly. I'm even shocked to see this coming from an official handle. We both know that this officer doesn't need retreats to get justice. He's in the system and he knows exactly how to get justice. But for ordinary civilians who isn't connected, we resort to social media. And SP Benjamin Hundeyin says, you obviously missed the point. The issue here is not the justice, it's the outcry. I hope this helps. Next comment comes from Lone Cat. Lone Cat says, policemen, civilians are all humans. This should be about humanity, Mr. Ben. Please stop trying to play the stereotype card. That's from Lone Cat. There you can see the response of Benjamin Hundeyin. But the next comment is from Oyeneme. It says, please define outcry. Not even up to 30 days after your men murdered a youth and a pregnant woman. Oh, guy, you need to stop taking whatever it is you are taking. I mean, and Nigerians are rude. I mean, just naturally rude. I don't know why they do that. The next comment is from Ruben Oshomagbe. It says, there's a reason why the Nigerian police somewhat lacks empathy from the Nigerian people. Address these and then see the turnaround. Of course, Nigerians are not sympathetic towards police officers, and they have very valid reasons for that. Santos Akilele says, this is false equivalence, Mr. Ben. Leave statement like this to the public, not a police PRO. Some of us speak well of the police when we're needed. The issue is the good act are significantly less than the bad act, and it affects millions of lives. So it's normal it gets more reach. James C. O'Malley says, dear Ben, sorry for the incident and I wish them speedy recovery. Your lamentation should be, how can Nigerian police force redeem their respect and love in the eyes of Nigerians and not retreat? You don't force respect and love. It's best earned. Sadly, NPF lost theirs a decade ago. And CJ right underneath says, Is that a problem right now? One would have thought you'd tweet something like, the officer is currently responding to treatment and a manhunt for the culprit is currently ongoing. But here you are making comparison about retweet. How old are you again? I mean, Nigerians have a thing for respectfully disrespecting people. Uche says, thank God is alive and I hope justice is served. As for the outcry you're desperately seeking, you would not be getting it anytime soon, especially as victims of police barbarity always turn up dead. When your colleagues stop brutalizing Nigerians, you will begin to get without outcry. The Javu is the last comment on that story this morning. It says, many good deeds of the police, in quote, you don't get it, do you? Police shouldn't have a single bad deed, but on a bad deed, plenty pass waiting you refer to as good deeds. If you lot do your job well, this won't happen. Now you know why the retweet did increase as expected. But that's that on that story this morning for the Lagos police, saying that they did not get any sympathy when one of their officers was involved in an accident. And of course, you can understand why, although it's not really good that you, before we became professionals, police officers, journalists, doctors, we're all humans. And so whenever anyone is in distress, they should be attended to. But then the police also needs to sanitize its ranks so people can restore their empathy and the love and sympathy that they have for police officers. Now from Nigeria, we'll move outside the shores of the country to Europe, where the Russia-Ukraine war has been ongoing for quite some time now. It will enter its 12th month next month, February. But interestingly, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs tweeted yesterday that President Putin has instructed the defense minister of the Russian Federation to introduce a ceasefire along the entire line of contact in Ukraine from 12 o'clock on January 6, 2023 to 24 on January 7th, 2023 on the introduction of a ceasefire along the entire line of contact in Ukraine for Orthodox Christmas. Now, in Russia, Christmas is not celebrated in December. It is celebrated somewhere in January. So President Putin is saying that because we are celebrating Christmas in January here in Russia, we're going to cease hostilities. But that did not happen when Ukraine was celebrating Christmas in December 25th. So let's see what people have had to say about that on social media. The CNN first broke the news, and the Libra, well, that's talking about the Canada issue, but the Libra, I'll just take it from here, says, Elda says, a ceasefire is possible when both parties agree. How can Russia unilaterally decide about a ceasefire? Before ordering his defense minister, Putin should have consulted the Ukrainian leadership. Looks like Russia badly needs a break to consolidate with massive losses in the past few days. The next comment comes from Bruce Martin. Bruce Martin says, so that he can restore order amongst the strip and move troops and equipment without getting destroyed by Ukraine. Right underneath, Tom, not Jerry, says, no problem at all. Ukraine would make best use of Vladimir call home. The next comment is from J. Mark, says, you try to destroy civilian infrastructure, hospitals, and wish death to the Ukrainians, and now you want to cease fire because you want to pray to your God? There is no God with you. Satan is the one you worship. So, go to hell. The next comment is from Alistair McLeod. It says, is this like the ceasefire along the safe routes that you violated, or is this the ceasefire while you wait for more tanks and Iranian drones to arrive? Mars Damsgaard says, excellent instructions provided the forces retreat back to the original borders with Ukraine and stay there. If not, well, they will go home in a bag. The next comment is from Megan Buchanan, says, what do you consider the front lines in Ukraine? Does that include Donetsk, Luhansk, and the south? Anyway, you had chances to do this on Western Christmas, but you didn't. Should we trust this? Tamara Kravchenko says, you bombed all over Ukraine hundreds of missiles on Christmas Day and on New Year and killed civilians. But today the invader wants a ceasefire. That's rich. Remember, I told you that Russia doesn't celebrate Christmas with the rest of the world. They celebrate their own Christmas somewhere around January. And so while Ukraine was celebrating Christmas in December, Russia was bombing Ukraine. And now because Russia is celebrating Christmas January, they want a ceasefire. And some say that that is not genuine. That's some ulterior motives there from the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The next comment is from Vaporiso. It says, you won't get it. You will use it as a means to prepare for an assault. You want your troops safe over Orthodox Christmas. Leave Ukraine. You started this. Don't expect favors. And CT says, Russia is welcome to temporarily pause the genocide it's committing in Ukraine because it observes because it observes Christmas on the wrong day, but Ukraine has no obligation to stop defending its territory and liberating its people from the imperialist colonizers in return. And that you can see, we'll go back to the original story where the president of Russia has asked the defense minister of the Federation to introduce a ceasefire along the entire line of contact in Ukraine to ensure that its troops can observe Orthodox Christmas, which is Russia's own version of Christmas that doesn't occur in December 25th. Now, that's the end of our spring trends for you today. I like to say that it's Friday, so make sure that you enjoy yourself, but enjoy yourself responsibly. Stay on the safe side of the law. Do not get into trouble. We'd like to see you. We'd like to see you here on Monday. We'd like to see you, bring you back here and bring you some of the issues trending. My name is Emmanuel Ujadigele. You can follow me on Twitter at EM_Ujadigele. Remember to dance to this guitar. The things that are impossible, the things that money cannot buy, God will do them for you. Have a lovely weekend.